Alright, to sum up my ECS210 experience, I'm very thankful for this class. It's taught me a lot, and it makes me more confident going into the workplace as a teacher to not only just teach the kids the knowledge, but to teach them all life lessons and values. So one thing we learned about was common sense, and is defined as good sense and sound judgment in practical matters. As a group, what we expect to be common sense is not the same for everyone. So throughout situations that happen, I tend to just look at it one way, just because it's something that's been engraved in my mind since I was a little girl, and I've never questioned it. And I didn't realize that this could become a problem and that it could create conflicts. So basically, common sense is something that you've grown up knowing all your life, and you never second guessed it, which is exactly not what you want your kids to do. You want your kids to question almost everything, because that's how they're going to build and grow into individuals. Curriculum as place, process, and product. So we learned about a hidden curriculum, which is teaching through non-structural teaching, refers to the unwritten, unofficial, and often unintended lessons, values, and perspectives that students learn in school. I think this is a very important one, just because of the fact that students not only need to know the knowledge to become into the society, to become a member of the society, but they need to know who they are as an individual, and this is not something you can teach. This is something that they're just going to have to learn on their own, through experiences, through challenges. All of that will build them up. And also, the null curriculum, formulated by Einer in 1979, consists on the amount of teaching material which is not covered, taught, nor included in the typical curricula of school districts. So I believe that the null curricula changes as society progresses, just due to the priorities that change also as well as society progresses. So what's believed to be the null curriculum is subjects such as visual and performing arts, whereas subjects such as English, social studies, math, and science take greater priority and are kind of above that. This really bothers me, because I believe that visual and performing arts are used in everyday life, just as English, social studies, math, and sciences. The information you learn in visual and performing arts are just as important as any other thing. As I said, what we're trying to do is not just teach children knowledge, is to teach them who they are as an individual, and they're not going to be able to learn that if they don't do these visual and performing arts classes and they don't discover what they like, what they dislike. Another important lesson we learned about is the Tyler rationale theory. Basically, its students are treated as factory line workers, giving them the mentality that there's only one way to do things, and that prepares them for the workforce. The Tyler rationale does not account for all learning types, but I do think it's a good model just to have as a foundation and to build off of it using other instructional strategies and teaching philosophies. It's kind of based around the fact that, that you do things a certain way and you don't really give kids a choice. But I believe that it's a foundation as in the fact that you can use it to show kids one way how to do it, and then let them explore other ways on how to get the same answer or the same purpose of what you're teaching them. The Tyler rationale kind of leads into other instructional strategies and teaching philosophies. So one of the curriculum theorists I studied was John Locke. His philosophy of education concerns itself with a particular idea that children's mind should be a clean slate, and the educators themselves are responsible for shaping the personality of the pupil. This can be done through a student-centered classroom, so they have the ability to expand their knowledge beyond the information provided by me as a teacher. This has influenced me as a teacher to ensure I let my students have choices in how they perceive their knowledge and reflect on their experience to help shape their personality. I want to be sure my students can make rational decisions. It's very important to me that this kind of happens, just because of the fact that I'm a firm believer in that students are not coming to school just to learn the knowledge, but they're coming to school to learn kind of who they are, where they stand in the world, where they want to be in the world, to set goals, short-term, long-term, just to figure out who they are because basically you want to include this in every aspect of your teaching as you can, because our students and the future generation needs to learn how important it is to how it shapes our country and how it shapes their First Nations identity as well as ours. We had a couple guest speakers come in, and it was kind of cool to learn about their experiences with treaty education. The one guest speaker said she had learned how to do math in a Cree language, I do believe, and that was really interesting to hear. Also, they make it seem so simple on how to incorporate it into your classroom. But I do understand that some teachers tend to not include it just because of the fact that they're not well educated in it. And this is why the Treaty Education Certificate is very important, as well as keeping up with constant changes and information about First Nations and their culture. I just think, honestly, if a teacher is more confident in knowing the knowledge, they're going to be more confident teaching it in their classroom, which will raise the levels of how much we actually do teach it in the classroom. As a science major, I would never be able to go into a math classroom and be able to teach math just solely for the fact that I'm not comfortable in it and I don't know it as well as I would want to, and just because I would feel like I'm not raising it up to a high enough level. When complex human beings and situations are reduced to a single narrative, and that if you take a large group of people and condense it down, then you're taking away their humanity. So we watched the TED Talk, and the speaker said she had come to Canada, and the family she was sitting with thought that she had no education because she had come from Africa, and they assumed that Africa was poor. So this kind of was a bullet to the heart when I realized that I do single stories a lot, and I perceive things as single stories a lot. I never fully get the other side of the story, which is literally the opposite of a single story, where you get both sides of the story. It was kind of a hard pill to swallow, just because looking back on my experiences, like, I feel guilty of how I assume things just because of my common sense, or just because of, like, the single story. And I guess common sense plays a role in that as well. You're gonna, students are gonna perceive single stories, and it's gonna be partly your job and my job as an educator to kind of get rid of those single stories and make them realize that there's always two sides of the story. And yeah, so basically, that's my summary of 210. It was an awesome class, highly recommended. It's recommended because you have to take it, so there's that. And yeah.